We are Marc, Amy, Juliette and Clement from the medieval Chateau de Rosieres. This Christmas we've made you a very special Advent calendar. Every day from the 1st to the 25th of December we will open the door to a different room in the chateau and introduce you to its past, present and future. Merry Christmas.
Hello everybody, this is Amy, Marc, Clement and Juliette from Chateau de Rosieres wishing you a very, very Merry Christmas. We have come to the end of our Christmas Advent tour, our Chateau Advent tour, and we haven't managed to cover every single room in the chateau because it's pretty big. But we thought that today being Christmas Day, it would be nice to show you our chapel. And so Marc's been busy decorating it with the babies this morning. But before we get into the festive spirit, we have to keep up with showing you exactly what goes on here and the history of it. Would you like to tell everybody, mon chéri?
The other day we showed you our tiny kitchen, which might have been the original chapel of the chateau. But it's quite likely that at some point they decided to build a bigger one. They built a brand new chapel outside the chateau, probably so that people from the area could also come and pray without coming into the chateau. Architecturally, this chapel was probably built in the first half of the 17th century. There are still some remains of wall paintings on the vault that look like some early 17th century paintings in a chapel in a chateau we visited nearby. Very sadly, these paintings have been covered with some thin plaster, but we can see a few patches sticking out of it. In particular, one of them in the corner might have been an evangelist. So, because there were often the four evangelists at the four corners of a vault like this. Then there are some dark patterns here that might have been extended all the way along the walls. It's quite likely that the walls were plastered on the inside at the time. And sadly, they've all been cleared and the stones have been regrouted. But it's quite likely that the chapel was originally entirely painted. We don't know much about the history of the chapel itself. What we know is that a wedding was celebrated here in 1654 of Madeleine Marc de Rosieres, who was the last female descendant of the Rosieres family, who married Antoine de Reboulet, who then became by marriage Lord of Rosieres. The original altar was disassembled, but we still have the marble stones stored partly here, partly in the barn. And very interestingly, they still have the name Reboulet written at the back. Which means that they were probably the ones who ordered the marble altar. Then we don't really know what happened to the chapel after that. What we know is that in the 1950s it was used as a wine cellar, wine storage. And it was the work that has been done in it, the electricity and the regratting seem quite recent, probably the second half of the 20th century. The chapel is also mentioned in a book by a local historian of the early 20th century, and he visited the chapel at the time and mentioned very heavy reinforcements on the outside that were probably made to prevent the collapse of the vault. These reinforcements are still there and are actually seem quite disproportionate in comparison with the rest of the chapel. Interestingly, he also talks about a dig that was done in the early 20th century in front of the chapel when they found bases of columns, which indicates that there might have been an earlier building at the place of the chapel.
on the altar stone that Marc found still here, there's an A and an M carved into the marble. And there are several options for that, why that was. It could be Ave Maria, and the other is that it could actually represent the two people who had this chapel commissioned, which was Antoine and Madeleine, when they got married. But whichever the real reason behind that, it now means Amy and Marc. And one of our big aims here is to try to reinstall the altar as it would have been when it was built.
The door of the chapel is really interesting because it's probably the original one. And we have a record of the early 17th century of an order that was made to a carpenter from the village who was ordered a door for the church in the village in Saint-Félicien, modeled on the one of Rosieres. So, and actually on the side of the church in Saint-Félicien, there is another door that looks pretty much like this one.
One of the most special things in this chapel is a recent acquisition. One of our wonderful patrons who's been a supporter for a long time, Michael from Germany, asked us if we would be able to find a home in our chapel for a very special carving which you can see behind us. And of course we said yes. And the history behind this is that his father, Jakob Anton Schweiger, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, was a sculptor, a wood sculptor of some renown, and his work was often given to local dignitaries, and including actually the Joseph Ratzinger, who later became Pope, received one of his carvings. And this one is a carving. This one is a carving of the Madonna and Child, and it was modelled on one from the 12th century. And it's so beautiful, you can still even see the working marks on it, and it's amazingly carved. And he carved it in 1961 to 1962, and then he gave it to one of his best friends. And when that friend was in his 80s, he decided to clear out his house because he was moving into a retirement home. And he asked Michael if he could find somewhere beautiful for it to have a home. And Michael has had it since 2014 in his home, but he felt that the chapel here at Rosieres would be a suitable place for it to come to afterwards. And we were very moved and very grateful for this bequest that was so meaningful to him and his family. And it looks absolutely perfect in here. Now, we don't keep it in here year round at the moment because it's very damp and we need to do some work in here. So the rest of the time it goes into our grand cellar. But at Christmas, of course, we've got to celebrate by having it in here. Thank you so much to everybody for watching this series. We've enjoyed it, and a little bit sad that it's ending, in fact, especially because we have so much more to show you. And we hope that you continue to follow our journey, and we look forward to showing you everything that we plan to do with the place. Wishing you a wonderful Christmas day wherever you are, peace and happiness for you and your families. And just to play us out, we have some music from the wonderfully talented Kent, who is one of our viewers, and we're going to attempt to sing along with him for a little bit of a Christmas sing-song, and we hope you'll join in with us at home.
Une nuit chrétien